Welcome to episode lucky number 13 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap.
That what this is? Is this lucky number 13?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we didn't make it, so you all know we record these in batches and stuff. Today's episode, I had to make a couple trips home. That was fun because Smart Rod decided to leave the microphones at home, so that was an adventure. And then I tried to charge my car, and they wouldn't stop charging. It's a whole thing. If you want a separate podcast of the adventure of just recording today,
no,
there's a whole.
No, we don't. We don't need a separate one.
So lucky number 13, yeah, X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm Rod. You can find me on Spotify, Instagram. Look up Rod Kim. Very few people doing things I'm doing with my name.
And I'm JC, and you can find me at the John Carl on pretty much everything. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we are going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, building up to the release of X-Men 97, coming to Disney Plus in 2023.
Fingers crossed. Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that came out 30 years ago.
Did you just call it a recap show?
Did I say recap show? We are a recap show.
Nope. You keep that line in there. You just keep pushing through, sir.
We're a recap show about a series that came out 30 years ago. There'll be spoilers. If you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, come back. We'll do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes we haven't covered yet. And we're not currently sponsored or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way. But hey, there's parental controls on there now. There's mature content. Netflix Marvel series is on there now. So we are welcome to be your adult content host. That didn't come out right.
No, God, I'm speaking of pushing through. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And Rod, what is our handle on TikTok?
Same thing, Cyclops IWFM Pod.
And of course, make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast services. Finally, we record these episodes in batches, so when we start to lose our shit by the end of the later episode, you guys can tell. And if we're reacting to any news that may seem out of date, similar to announcing that Disney Plus has parental controls roughly 5 weeks after that goes into effect in real life, that's why.
Now on to the show. I don't know how to follow that up. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 3, Whatever It Takes. It aired on November 6, 1993, and currently sits at a 7.2 star rating on IMDb. Oh, that's disappointing. I like this episode, but mostly because it's about Storm.
So I set up the scripts of who is the host and who is the support of each episode, and literally the whole decision of, who's going to host which episode today came down to us alternating and Rod needing to be the host of the Storm-focused episode.
Oh, that's great, because my notes, the first thing I said was, oh, snap, this is the Shadow King episode. I love it. Because I knew that Shadow King, from this series specifically, was really tied to Storm's backstory.
Yeah, lots of ties to Storm and lots of ties to Xavier specifically. And that is very consistent with the majority of the X-Men lore. Eventually, he starts getting very tied in with the current iteration of the New Mutants. But yeah, so much of Shadow King has been tied to Storm and to Professor X.
And Shadow King was the main villain of the Legion TV show. I'm correct.
Which I have not watched. So
you haven't?
I have not.
I was going to say who plays Shadow King, but that would be a major spoiler to the series, especially the first season. So I won't mention that here. But if you know if you're listening. But I think it's a cool show. It's not in any way tied to anything else in the Marvel various universes.
It's its own multiverse.
I do remember, though, because I was part of some like influencer installation when the second season of the show came out. They mentioned that the creators of the show were trying to make it so cool that it would have to be part of the MCU. It's a very, very cocky thing to say.
And from what I had heard, it was regarded as a fairly good show, but it just is tied into so much of the Fox ownership and such.
It was probably the most cerebral Marvel or even superhero show that has been around, but also what made it really impossible to tie into any other universe because it's so weird. But I recommend watching. It's really cool.
Well, you know what, Rod? At some point, we are going to run out of episodes of the cartoon. So 3 years from now, Legion reviews.
Sweet. And we're going to need edibles by that point.
We got them.
Mostly because of the show. If you watch Legion, you know.
They are totally legal in California. So
anyway, speaking of Shadow King, we're at Mount Kilimanjaro, and there's some kids playing soccer. One of them is remarkably fast.
And he's wearing a jersey. Did you notice the jersey?
I did not.
He's wearing a red jersey, specifically with the number 23 on it.
Oh, I don't know sports things.
God damn it, Rod.
Is that Michael Jordan?
That's Michael Jordan.
Okay. I'm just guessing because 90s. Who else would it be?
Yeah. Red jersey with a 23 on it in 1993. Who could that be?
That's the logo. That's the upside down like crab violating like a thing. Have you ever looked at the Bulls symbol?
No. Rod, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going, Rod.
Anyway, so there's one of them that at this point you're assuming is a mutant because he can run like so much faster than the rest of the kids. And the mutant kid starts seeing like a split down the mountain, which the other kids can't see. And so it's kind of a mystery and everybody thinks he's crazy.
After they've accused him of cheating because he's running so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you could run fast. There's no way anything else weird is happening.
Yeah. So you see the tear in the mountain. There's also red eyes to help us know that there's going to be some shit that's going to go down.
Yeah. And then we go to the X Mansion where Jean and Beast are seeing something triggered on the computer that...
Cerebro, specifically.
Is it Cerebro? Okay.
Yeah.
I know that Jean mentioned later it's Cerebro, but it's hard to keep track of what tech is in this room.
It was such a psychic spike that I read that as Cerebro.
And they directly tie it to the events that are happening at Kilimanjaro. Rogue is bringing Storm home from the hospital at that time. And
if you're just tuning in and you didn't listen to the last episode, that's because Storm got shot by cops who were being led by an evil Morph. I don't want to give any further context. Yeah. Now I just want that to be enough that they go listen to the last episode just in case.
Yeah, because it took however long the last episode was to explain why that makes sense.
Yep. God, it's a long episode too. It is a long episode. It's even longer to record, but the question is what's going on over there somehow tied to Bishop. Mm-hmm. I thought that was interesting because
Days of Future Past.
Yeah. Well, not that they would know that it's Days of Future Past, but they start to reference things that aren't even directly tied to it, which makes it feel like a bigger universe to me. Like it makes the story feel like tendrils could go out in any direction.
And to their credit, the last time they saw like magical openings in the sky were in thin air.
Well, there was the door. There was the door in the Bishop episode.
Yeah, so they're probably like, that sounds similar. You think it could be that? And then Jean says, oh, this clearly looks like a tear in the astral plane, which I'm glad that was like a clear answer to her. She was like, sure, we've seen this before, right?
She is one of the most powerful psychics on the planet.
Yeah. And somehow still with Scott. We don't know why. So Storm recognizes the location and she kind of you see this fear in her eye and she goes, Mijinari. And I think most people have connected by now that that's probably the kid that we saw earlier that was running really fast.
I would hope so. At this point, you should be able to pick up on that.
And we're back in Africa, and Mijinari is still witnessing this mountain opening up and the Shadow King. Do we know it's the Shadow King at that point?
We don't know it's the Shadow King at that point. We know, having watched the episode, it is the Shadow King, but his name has not been addressed yet.
So a giant dark cloud comes out of the tear in the mountain.
It's not just a dark cloud, to be fair. It's a dark cloud with a face and fangs and such. It looks like a really ghastly version of like Haunter from Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
I just used ghastly to describe Haunter, so that's extra confusing. Holy nerddom, Batman. Keep going.
So the Shadow King or Dark Cloud or whatever, or Pokemon.
The dark Pokemon.
The dark Pokemon possesses Mijinari.
Yep.
And it gets scary because he has red eyes, and that's usually the signal in this show that something nefarious is afoot. Yep. And we now cut to a third location,
which is the Upper Amazon in Brazil.
So did you have to look that up, or was this clear in the show somehow?
It said it on the screen, Rod.
Oh.
I would not have written down Upper Amazon.
Okay. So a little bit of behind the scenes.
Do you watch it on your phone?
No, I watched it on my TV, but I have my laptop in front of me taking notes. I'll bet the top of my laptop covered that portion.
So you read Mount Kilimanjaro, but the Amazon, you're like, nope.
I have a cat. I don't know how to describe things.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just going to blame the distractions.
So you have Wolverine on this Jungle Cruise. It literally is the boat from the Jungle Cruise. Let's be real. This is like Disney theme park inspired Jungle Cruise
without the dad jokes or the Rock.
No, but you did get a racist, so it's just like being in Florida.
And I do like that the captain of that little Jungle Cruise boat was like, so the person you're looking for can look like anybody he wants. He's not one of those mutants, is he? He's like, are there other types of people in this universe that can do this thing?
Yes, actually there are. Okay. Because we do know that this is a universe where there are non-mutant heroes. There is Spider-Man in this universe that is acknowledged in the show.
Okay.
Captain Marvel is acknowledged in this show. Captain America is acknowledged in this show.
No,
so there are powered beings.
Would this particular boat captain know the differentiation?
No.
Okay.
No. He assumes they're all dem muties. And he has a little shitty monkey, too.
Yeah, which The monkey is kind of friendly to Wolverine.
Yeah, I just hate all monkeys.
Okay. And so they dock or land or whatever.
Yeah, they dock
with the boat, and he's still talking to Wolverine, but by the time he turns around, Wolverine has just like disappeared. He's vaporized. He's like, I'm out of here. This guy's annoying.
And by vaporize, you mean he literally just walked off?
Yeah, he just walked off. Yep. This guy's not paying attention.
So he starts walking into a bar, and he passes by two people. Rod, our favorite game. Who are those characters?
Oh no! See, those two characters, I didn't know were anybody significant. I thought they looked similar to the villagers at Kilimanjaro. So they're important characters?
They are not important characters, but they are definitely references. They are not the little green guy from the opening sequence. So you have two mutants who appeared in the original Wolverine comic. You have Bloodscream and Roughhouse.
What names?
So they are specifically Wolverine associated villains from the comics.
Oh, that's really cool. Wow. Someone's paying attention in the show. Imagine if people do that now. Sorry.
No, here's the problem is if you do it now, you'd be watching it in a theater and 17 people would scream the name of the character at the same time. Or you'd be on your phone, Twitter's going, and everybody immediately tweets that person at the same time.
Yeah, or just screenshots it.
Yeah.
Man, that's... Anyway, it's a dangerous time to be a nerd with big movies coming out. So then we catch up with Rogue and Storm. They're arriving in Africa.
I believe it's the country of Tanzania and the city of Dodana. And in the distance of the city, you see smaller villages that have called for an emergency. And they make some sort of allusion to, well, something must be going on. We wouldn't have seen that spike in the astral plane and gotten the emergency call at the same time if something wasn't up.
Yeah, and they find that the village is on fire. And so Storm doing her thing. She makes it rain, put the fires out. Apparently the villagers thought the best plan of action while their houses are on fire to be in them.
You put it out from the inside?
Okay.
I don't know how to put out fires, right? So yeah.
So they come out of their homes that are now not on fire anymore, and they instantly recognize Storm. I think we're kind of in the same boat as Rogue at this point where we're learning things. And so it's clear that like this is where Storm is from, or she spent a good portion of her life here.
Yep. She sees Shawnee, who's one of the villagers, and she asks about her son. And that phrase kind of catches everybody off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, including Rogue.
Like, wait, Storm has a son? And this is where in the 90s there was a commercial break. So I think the thing that happens right before the commercial break is Mjolnir is my son. Dun! And then we watch
hell of a music sting right there,
right?
Rob.
And then we
Very
watch
good.
A bunch of...
You are absolutely a musician.
Thank you. Then we watch, I don't know, bubblegum commercials. They're probably neon colored at that time.
Oh, it was definitely toy commercials. It was toy commercials and fruit stripe gum.
Yeah, they last for like 2 seconds.
God, it was so good for 2 seconds, and then it just turned into cardboard.
Actually, you know, the thing that probably actually happened was those after these messages, we'll be right back, or something in that wheelhouse.
Again, professional musician.
Well, you remember the claymation things that... This was that was ABC, so it wouldn't have been for Fox Kids. But there was usually some sort of micro cartoon. I don't know how to explain it.
Fox Kids. It was like just somebody telling you to go fuck yourself.
Buy more shit from us.
Yeah, buy our stuff. We have to beat ABC. Fuck you, NBC. And who the fuck is CBS?
Wait, is that? Man, that's a whole other tangent.
That's a whole other tangent.
Just those things that were like pre-commercials for the commercials.
The interstitials.
Yeah, interstitial. Yeah, that they were just their whole other show. Like, remember that little claymation girl with the pennies for eyes? You probably recognize it if I showed it to you. She had a whole backstory, but she literally only popped up in interstitials before and after commercials.
Let's keep going with the X-Men, Rod.
Maybe she is an X-Man. We don't know it yet. Anyway, so we come back from that, whatever that was, and Shadow King reveals through like a monologue to Mjolnir that Storm is actually Mjolnir's godmother, and he wants to have Storm's like vessel so he can use her powers to do whatever he's going to plan on doing. And now we come back to the bar that Wolverine's at.
Back in the Amazon.
Yeah, and he immediately recognizes the bartender as Morph, even though the bartender doesn't look like Morph. We've established from the last episode.
Wolverine can smell Morph.
Yeah, which is so romantic.
So they have like their moment, and then to Morph's credit, Morph's powers have been solely focused on the ability to transform. Morph flips the entire bar onto Wolverine. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've known this, Rod. Bars are heavy.
Yeah.
So we see not only is he morphing and changing his appearance, he also literally flipped an entire bar onto Wolverine, and then he goes for the total mindfuck attack of like transforming into Jean. And this is one of those times where I do think Wolverine's reaction is not totally appropriate, because he starts to get freaked out by the things that Morph is saying as Jean, but he knows that it's Morph who did it. It's not like he just encountered Jean and was hearing these things that she's saying of like, oh, I love Cyclops and not you, and things like that. He knows that that is Morph fucking with him, and it still starts like,
it's too close to home.
Yeah, it felt like he fell for the trick that wasn't even really a trick.
Yeah, I guess I sort of identify with that, because like on one hand you could interpret it as, well, he's very physically strong and can heal and stuff, so maybe he's not the most mentally strong. But at the same time, I'm one of those people that like most of the time I have to like kind of pretend to go along with like a mean joke, because deep inside I'm like, oh, there's a kernel of truth in there, you know. So even for Wolverine, if he even's aware that that's not Jean, he's like, well, the things that Morph Jean is saying have a kernel of truth to him. He's like, I don't want to deal with this right now. And it's just so traumatic.
Yeah, but I feel like at that point, just punch him in the face.
Well, that too, yeah.
Punch not Jean in her face.
That's the slogan of the show. Punch not Jean in the face.
Oh, we know what you're going to clip out for the promo.
And
back to the village.
Yeah, and well, real quick with Morph. The more I see why they fridged him for the first season, because the more he exhibits his powers, the more questions I have. And I think even as a child, I had questions about how this worked. Because like you said, he flipped the entire bar, and the confusion doesn't improve as the series goes along with Morph. So we're back at the village, and Shani and Storm are kind of sussing out more of this story with Mizunari. So we find out that Shani's actually Mizunari's biological mother, but was stillborn, or at least very sick or something. And
he came out not breathing, essentially. Yeah. And while it was she said it was a really difficult birth, so while the midwife was taking care of Shawnee to make sure she was going to survive childbirth, Storm actually is the one who performed CPR on the baby, ensuring that he survived, and the relationship was built off of that. And they said the phrasing, to the paraphrasing here, Storm came to the village an orphan and left one of us, showing that it wasn't just she came, she was a hero, and then she left. She actually spent time and was a part of the life of these villagers and Mizunari specifically.
Yeah, and they said that basically Mizunari grew up with two moms. Yep. They're pretty equal, which is, you know, saying a lot, especially in this time, like in the 90s, to have like kind of like a non-nuclear family, not in America and stuff. Like really, really progressive thinking. It's really cool.
Yep.
And then Shadow King as Mizunari. Man, this is almost as confusing as Morph's thing last episode.
It's only like 2 body swaps though, so it's not too bad.
So Shadow King as Mizunari confronts Storm and then kind of challenges her. I almost thought it was going to be a battle, but basically says like, meet me at the mountain. We'll deal with it there.
Yeah, Shadow King is like, okay, cool. I'll give up this body, but I want you instead. Shadow King also, and this is one of those things where I wondered back when I originally watched it, if I had missed an episode or something like that, because again, they're treating kids smarter than how most cartoons and TV shows at the time would. They reference the fact that the Shadow King was trapped in the astral plane by Xavier, condemned to living death, exhibiting that there's history between these characters. And it wasn't something that had happened in an earlier episode. It was actually saying, here's stuff that happened off camera. We're going to tell you about it, but we don't have to show it to you because we respect your intelligence enough to understand what is going on and not needing to see 17 more flashbacks.
Yeah. I actually, in this recent viewing, wondered if I had missed an episode or forgotten about what we talked. Not missed an episode, obviously I haven't missed an episode. Been here talking about all of them. But if I forgot about something.
Or if you watched an episode out of order, which is entirely possible.
I double checked this one. We have a spreadsheet. I double checked before I watched them.
We do have a spreadsheet.
And which is John's doing, is not, I'm not organized. So, but I actually went to as far as to pausing it, looking back at the rest of my notes, because I do save them. And also looking up IMDb to the voice actor of Shadow King to see if there was an episode. And once I realized Shadow King is not in my notes before this, and that actor pops up one more time in the series, I guess minor spoiler, at least in IMDb credits. I don't remember the episode they referenced, but I was like, okay. So it was just a kind of, we're going to revisit this, but there's a backstory here. But yeah, that Professor X is the one that fought him and like kind of banished him to Hole in the Mountain world.
Holy Mountain World?
Hole in the Mountain World.
Hole in the Mountain World.
Yeah.
Good.
This is why I wasn't in charge. That's why I'm not a show writer, because these would be my names.
It's going to be the best #1 hit you ever write.
Hole in the Mountain World.
Hole in the Mountain World.
All right, if you're listening to this, I'm going to write Hole in the Mountain World theme song.
Yep. That's going to be our season 2 theme.
There you go.
Yep.
Let's get Ron on that too.
I'm sure he can't wait.
And so Shadow King kind of starts to bargain with Storm. Like, I'll give you your son back if I can take your form. And Rogue is like, are you crazy? And Storm just yeets Rogue away.
Wind yeets Rogue.
Wind yeets.
Yep.
I'm writing a track list now for the next album.
It's all going to be based on one episode.
Right.
That's the funny part.
And so then the whole transaction takes place. Shadow King doesn't do what most mobsters do. He keeps good on his bargain. He lets Mizunari go. He possesses Storm, and then Shadow King Storm goes off to get revenge on Professor Xavier.
Yeah, starts screaming, Xavier, I've won, and specifically calls out, I'm going to rule Cairo. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Ooh, nope.
This is definitely very tied to the comics, but
Okay.
The individual who Shadow King possesses for a very long time period is somebody who has lived for a really long time in Cairo and actually has taken advantage of like orphaned kids, what you would call like, the street rat kids and stuff.
Aladdin.
Yeah, and has like his own little group that he has like committing minor crimes and stuff like that. And that all happens on the streets of Cairo.
That makes a flashback that's going to happen very soon make a lot more sense. So this is a tangent. Does that imply or just flat out say that Apocalypse and Shadow King have interacted several times in the past?
No.
Oh, interesting. Nope. So they both existed there. What a weird place to be in that time of history then.
Well, Apocalypse was in the time of the pharaohs. Shadow King is recent history.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Gotta get my timeline straight, because also that makes sense because Storm would not. Okay, anyway.
Yep.
Moving forward.
And then we get a interaction between Rogue trying to fight Shadow King Storm. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, he sees the power in Rogue, but he also rejects trying to take over Rogue's body, calling Rogue's body crowded. And I thought that was a really cool illusion, because in the show, we know that Rogue, has absorbed the evil that is within Archangel. But something that we're going to see later, we've alluded to this before, there are parts of Rogue's history that remain a part of her as well. So Rogue isn't just absorbing one thing about one person. Mm-hmm. She has a lot that she's dealing with overall.
Yeah. So this was something actually that I never really settled when I was a kid watching this. And you probably have a better understanding of this. But I had these dual understandings of Rogue's powers. So she absorbs Gambit's powers because he thought she consented to making out in the previous episode.
Yep.
And then over time they fade away.
They dissipate.
Because of brief interaction. But there's other interactions that, no spoilers, that are longer that seem to be permanent in Rogue. Is that permanent, or is it just a longer taper off that's going to outlive her?
It ties to what the interaction was, and part of it is the intent of the interaction. Mm. While she doesn't have full control over absorbing people, she doesn't have the option not to, she can absorb more of them, similar to what she did with Juggernaut. She was not trying to take all of Juggernaut's strength. Mm. She just needed to take enough to weaken him.
So she has kind of her powers version of pulling her punches or going for it.
Yeah, there's no off switch, but there is a minimum and extended versions.
Yeah. And she had a lot. I'm guessing that extended to her having a lot more control with taking out just the evil part of Archangel, but not debilitating him.
I mean, I think she was trying to knock out Archangel.
Oh, okay.
To be fair. I don't think she was trying to absorb him, but she was I need to knock this dude out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And she actually makes an attempt to, it looks absorb Shadow King from Storm, which would make sense in that setting if you kind of knew broadly what their powers were. It's okay, yeah, she can take the soul right out of this
I don't know, but she gets zapped and dropped, so it didn't matter.
So Rogue is still attempting to absorb Shadow King from Storm, so Shadow King Storm tornadoes Rogue out of the sky, and Mizunari...
Yeet number 2.
Yeah. And then Mizunari actually catches her. I like the little bit of realism here where Mizunari gets hurt a bit, and he's I'm fast, but I'm not that strong, which Granted, Rogue is an adult woman that's very muscular and strong, but that could not have felt good hearing. It's like, you're pretty heavy, lady, falling out of the sky.
Okay. He's still like a kid,
Yeah, he's
though,
a teenager.
trying to catch a standard-sized woman falling out.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, I just broke your fall. That's all.
Yeah. Although that says something too. Like, he's not broken after. Anyway, there's a lot of physics there we don't need to get into. We cut away back to Wolverine. He's in the forest and immediately falls down a mine shaft. That's where we catch up with him.
Yep.
And he's confronting Morph, and Morph is very cinematic, and he is giving a monologue in the darkness of the shadow of the mine shaft. So he starts turning these characters. I did recognize a couple of them. I think you're going to be pretty entertained by who my guesses were the wrong ones. So I obviously recognized Deadpool. That was kind of cool to see, even as a kid and now. He turns into Omega Red, which is foreshadowing. I know this one is wrong, but I was like, was that Nova?
Nova.
Yeah, I don't know why. That I honestly don't have any like calculations of why I thought that. It's just it was the name that popped in my head when I saw the image.
So Rod has the memory of a goldfish because we've actually seen this character on screen in the original Sabretooth episode when we're having flashbacks of Sabretooth's memories. And it was Maverick, who has not been named in the show, but we have seen Maverick multiple times.
I also have smoke and drink since then. So.
Yeah, that's fair. So they get into a fight. We get another Wolverine versus Wolverine fight. Actual Wolverine cuts through Morph Wolverine's claws, which, okay, cool. I guess you could cut through pieces of Morph and it doesn't kill him. Turns into a panther. It's a panther, right?
Yeah, it looked like a Black Panther and a rhino.
And then turns into a rhino.
So this goes with my thing I said earlier where I have questions about Morph's powers. So he's not just humanoid morphing. Is this a consistent thing with his character?
So the thing about Morph is the character that he's based off of is Changeling, who only had a very short time frame. He was in the X-Men comic books. And then the next version of Morph that would come in the Exiles comic years later was a dramatically different power set in very extreme in his abilities. This is kind of a blank slate, so it didn't need to be consistent with something that pre-existed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this is kind of it's a little bit of a MacGuffin, because then that just sends my mind spiraling. It's like, if you can turn to a panther and a rhino, then what's to stop dragons and shit, you know? Like, it's crazy
I mean,
stuff.
to an extent, he has a little bit of Beast Boy from Teen Titans.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's like probably a limitation. We're just not quite clear on where that's at.
Right.
Probably mostly plot device.
And then final transformation turns into Sabretooth. Then you get one of my favorite images of Wolverine in a fight where he gets the upper hand, draws his claws, and has the left and rightmost claws on the side of his opponent's face, and you know that the middle claw is just not poked up, because if he does that, he would like puncture somebody's skull. And we don't know if Morph would survive this.
And we wouldn't have seen it on Fox Kids on Saturday morning.
Would have been amazing if we did, though.
Yeah, so he spares. He's trying to catch Morph. He's not trying to kill him. But also Morph is just like not afraid to go into that psychological warfare. Within like hours, we're assuming he's turned into Jean and Sabretooth and taunted Wolverine. So also, and
I mean, also, you know, we don't have the full history of it yet, but the Deadpool moment, the Omega Red moment, the Maverick moment, there's a reason he's turning into those characters.
Yeah.
So
it really kind of shows how close they were before the series started. So it's not just Wolverine just, you know, being sad for no reason. They were pretty close.
Yeah. Except sad Wolverine on the bed holding the picture frame.
Yeah. That would have been incredible if Morph turned into that. It's like, wait, how did you know about that? It's like, I've been watching Peter Parker's vlog, man.
The vlog in 1993.
Right. Which, sidebar, did you know that Salil Moonfry, who's Punky Brewster, actually kept the vlog then?
No.
So there's a show on Hulu called like 90s Kid or something. She carried a camcorder around with her and vlogged everything. It wasn't called vlogging, obviously, but
it was called MTV True Life.
Right. But she just said she knew her life was so crazy she needed to videotape it for some reason. So when you watch the footage, it's like, this is a vlog. Also kind of messed up. Just trigger warning if you want to watch it. But anyway, back to the
show. We are on tangent fucking hell on this one.
Morph also kind of like lets Wolverine off easy. I don't know if that's the right phrasing, because Wolverine could clearly kill Morph. But he doesn't end it. And he runs off saying that he needs to do this by himself.
Yep, I need to get through this by myself.
Of all the characters, Wolverine would understand, because he literally said the same thing several episodes ago. And then Wolverine says that he'll be there when Morph's ready, and also the X-Men will be there when he's ready, which I guess kind of he goes with what I just said about like if there's anybody that understands that, it's Wolverine. I don't know why it took this much of it for Wolverine to understand it, but sure, I don't know what's going on in their heads. I've never had to lead these lives.
I mean, I think a part of it is this was his first chance to really confront Morph one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Wolverine probably believed if he could get him one-on-one, he could change his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing what their one-on-one interaction was, that was kind of the like, oh, I might have to step back a minute.
Yeah. Or he saw him turn into a rhino. He's like, fuck this, man.
Yeah, rhinos suck, dude. Not the gene psychological attack, the rhino. That's what triggered him. So
then we go back to where Storm and that whole crew is, and Storm is having flashbacks because Shadow King's in her head and everything, and we see, which I know now was Cairo when Storm was a child, and she was a pickpocket who was an organization or unofficial organization run by the Shadow King possessing someone's body, I guess.
To some extent, he would possess bodies, but to others, it was just lording control over.
Oh, so he was just kind of an influence.
Sometimes there would be possession. Sometimes because you can't possess multiple people at once.
Yeah.
But it's like this badass version of Shadow King who's in like armor and stuff like that.
He almost looks like, was it
the Destroyer?
Destroyer or like the Celestials in one of the Thor
Closer
movies.
to Destroyer, but
yeah. Kind of that like spacey armor thing.
Yeah.
Better look than the nebulous cloud with fangs and red eyes.
What, you don't like my ghastly haunter?
Yeah, he evolved out of Pokemon form to humanoid form.
Yeah, that was his third evolution.
Okay. So if you're bored and you're an illustrator, you should draw out this Pokemon evolution for Shadow King. That would be hilarious and adorable. So Storm is coming in and out of consciousness with Shadow King in her body, and I again love that you're doing hand gestures on a podcast. That's just me. I talk way too much with my hands. There's a slip of me hosting something for like a Dolby thing, and you just silence the audio, and my hands are doing so much talking. Anyway, Storm kind of comes to the realization that she's going to need to destroy herself to destroy the Shadow King. She has to know more than I do, because that doesn't immediately check out for me as like the very first option things. But sure, like if I see something who can possess different bodies and stuff and has clearly just floated around in the air without bodies, I wouldn't be completely confident that killing myself would do the job. But she is.
We don't know the limits of the Shadow King's power. Mm-hmm. And we don't know the history in full, so we kind of need to leave that open. Of there's something that
she knows more.
She knows more than we do, and maybe the rules are if Shadow King is in somebody when they die, he dies too.
Yeah, and she gives him plenty of warning because she narrates this very clearly as she's doing it.
Well, I'm pretty sure she doesn't want to actually kill herself, so she starts flying straight up.
Yeah,
get to the point where there's not enough oxygen, cold enough, and he ejects.
Then she falls and Rogue catches her, as is happening in every other episode, literally. Shadow King is kind of this like red energy that's just in the air off to the side. And they're kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do about this. And Mizhnari says that he can still see the tear in the mountain. They very quickly figure out that the tear in the mountain is what Gene said is the tear on the astral plane, but it's healing. And they even mentioned this back at the beginning of the episode. They're like, oh, it seems to be like getting smaller or whatever.
Yep.
And so they realize that because of plot device, they have just enough time to go capture him. So it seems like off camera they make a plan. However, once they start executing it, it seems like all three people have different plans.
Well, Mizhnari is like, I'm going to bait and I'm going to run in there. Rogue thinks that throwing a giant rock at the Shadow Ghost is going to work. It doesn't.
Storm thinks zapping him will work.
Also doesn't. Yeah. Mizhnari runs through the hole into the astral plane. Shadow King follows in, and they don't know, being Rogue and Storm, that it hasn't fully sealed. They just know that Mizhnari is now in the mountain. Yeah. And you get this very like trippy, very Jack Kirby-esque visual sequence.
I was going to say, like, look a lot like the Doctor Strange movie visuals.
Yeah, that's a very Kirby feel to it.
Yeah, because Storm and Rogue can't see, because we've established for whatever reason Mizhnari's the only one that can see the astral plane tears.
Yep. Something with his powers, let's go with. And Shadow King starts to try to possess him, realizes that the hole is sealing, and decides to eject out of Mizhnari to try to fly through. Instead, Mizhnari, coming back into consciousness, is able to outrun the Shadow King, sticks his hand through the hole, Storm calling for him.
Yeah, because she goes hysterical, as a mother would, scraping her nails against the rock.
Yep.
And I love the Rogue decides to just punch the rock. Because she's like, if he's in there, we're gonna get him out. And I'm like, that has to be one of the most like American answers ever. It's like, he's in the astral plane. Let's punch him out of this rock.
Yeah, I'm gonna punch the shit out of this rock.
But to both their credits, all that craziness is creating that noise where Mizunari's, it seems like he's able to follow the rock punching.
Yep.
and the screaming.
Well, it gives them an anchor point. Because I think one of the things that, they were running out of time in the episode, probably. But you're in this very surrealist world. You need something to focus in on to get yourself out of it. So his mother's voice is what leads him back. And
love was the answer all along.
Yeah, the hand sticks out through the rock. They pull him out, and then it seals behind, and the Shadow King is locked up again.
Yeah, there forever, or so we think. I honestly don't remember at this point.
You're the best, Rod.
So things kind of just, at least get recovered to a point where Rogue and Storm can leave and things seem pretty peaceful at the village. And they fly away and they make a comment to help segue the transition. They're like, I wonder how Professor Xavier's doing.
Yep. And then we jump over and we see Xavier and Magneto, and they're climbing out of the snow, presumably from that avalanche that happened at the end of the last episode. Quick aside, throughout the season, they being the writers were told that they were not supposed to have one big overarching story for the entire season. They wanted it to be a little bit more bite-sized from the network. This was the way for the writers to be able to have some sort of arc that carried over, that gave the connectivity between the specific episodes.
Okay.
So when the scripts were being written, the writers per episode were instructed, insert Xavier Magneto moment, and basically left like a 2-minute block in every episode for that specifically.
That's cool. And also it's kind of, similar to why they kept Beast out of so many episodes in the first season. It's like, we can only do so many characters at once. But these are important characters, so they need their own little subplot.
So we finally hear what this place is, because Xavier says, well, what is this? And Magneto says, well, this is the Savage Land. I believe his phrasing was a place long forgotten.
Because Xavier's surprised that there's like an Amazon forest in the middle of Antarctica.
Yep. And as they're crawling out of the snow, they start to realize they don't have their powers. And that shocks Magneto.
Yeah, and Xavier can walk.
Yeah, Xavier can walk. They get attacked by pterodactyl riders.
That's something that if you want to put together things that like 8-year-old boys are going to love, like I bet the writers were like, yes, let's get basically cavemen riding on pterodactyls. Yep. That sounds awesome. And it is. Even now, as I'm almost 40, it's still freaking awesome.
Well, so they get attacked by the pterodactyl riders, end up falling into the water, and looks like they're about to go over a waterfall.
Why not?
They go over a waterfall. It's not even about to. They actually go over it. Cool. So, important things to talk about from this episode. One thing that was really creepy was the image of Mizunari coming out of the mountain was intentionally there to mimic birth.
Oh, wow. His hand reaching out?
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrific.
That's totally horrific.
Oh, my God.
Did not get that from the show, but now that's burned in my skull.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that makes so much more sense. Yeah, because Storm is there. She rescues. Okay. Hey, writers. I see what you're doing.
And this was also considered a first installment into Storm's origin story.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Besides all the references to her claustrophobia.
Yeah, but the claustrophobia is not necessarily an origin story. That's like.
Well, I mean the flashbacks that we saw.
Yeah, but we never really got
that one time she was Caucasian as a kid.
Yeah, that was awkward. But yeah, that's one of the things about this show is we know there is more than just everybody's good and join this team. There's history to all these people, and this was our first instance of seeing that with Storm.
Yeah, and you see, like, it's kind of a piece of her backstory that shows you you don't get the regal, wise Storm without kind of a messy history. I mean, she was a pickpocket. It's kind of hard to... Granted, it probably wasn't a huge impact, like, on the world, considering how many, like, other villains and murders and things are happening, but hard to defend as, like, a noble thing and stuff, but we're getting more bite-sized pieces of what her childhood was like.
Yep. Any other thoughts for this episode, aside from not recognizing Maverick?
I love Storm, and so this is one of my favorites. I remember this one, even not having watched episodes in, a decade or more, just because I thought it was cool. And also, it was interesting that it was a Storm backstory that took place in Africa that wasn't overshadowed by, like, a Black Panther, like the hero Black Panther presence and stuff. because I feel like outside of the Fox X-Men shows, which are awful anyway, but whenever I hear someone bring up Storm and they're talking about her backstory in like Africa or Cairo or whatever, they bring up T'Challa at some point, which is great. He's a great character and everything. It's just like, she's so cool on her own. I love that, like, she was the main focus of that backstory, and the Shadow King was her nemesis, and like, it was a really cool story, and I can't wait to see. I actually don't remember the episodes coming up that do more of her backstory, so I'm really looking forward to seeing those after rewatching this.
Well, I think a part of that is just from a timeline perspective, a lot of the heavy crossover, especially when it comes to a relationship between Storm and Black Panther, doesn't actually happen in our timeline until the like mid 2000s. There wasn't as tight a relationship between them, at least from the comic books of the 90s. It was something that would come a decade or so later.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, maybe that's why I like that version, because that's the one I got introduced to.
Yeah, because I believe the marriage between Storm and T'Challa didn't happen until the Civil War storyline, which was latter part of the 2000s. So
very cool. Yeah, no, I love Storm stories, and I love Storm, and she didn't have any corny lines that I remember in this episode.
No, they've toned down some of like the awkward Storm lines in this second season so far.
We've talked in between episodes about like, were they just trying to give her and other characters lines? Because there's been times where situations are completely resolved and then Storm just says something to add to the conversation that didn't need to be added, but not this episode. They did her justice. I don't know. I like this episode. That's the TLDR.
All right, cool. Rod, do you want to wrap us up?
So thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts, like how much you love Storm, make sure to drop them in the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram post about this episode. And as long as I keep doing them, we have YouTube shorts too, and I think you can leave comments on those, interact with those. Otherwise, I'm just going to stop doing them because right now they literally have 0 views. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, and probably TikTok. Try it out if you're one of the not children on TikTok.
Well, now you need to keep posting it on TikTok because you shouted out the TikTok.
There you go. I'm just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
On to TikTok.